Andy wasn't the jealous type. At least, that's what he always told himself. He wasn't the guy who checked his wife's phone or tracked her location. He trusted Jessica. They'd been together for 5 years, married for 2. She was smart, beautiful, funny, and grounded. The kind of person who didn't play games. Still, something had been off lately. It started small. Jessica had picked up a new habit of keeping her phone face down at dinner. She laughed more at her texts than she used to. Her work hours started stretching longer and longer. "We're prepping for the new campaign," she'd say, brushing his concern away with a quick kiss on the cheek. "It's Clyde's first big pitch. I'm helping him get it polished." Clyde. That name had been showing up more and more lately. Andy hadn't even met the guy, but he already didn't like him. From what Jessica said, Clyde was charming. Too charming, in Andy's opinion. "He's harmless," she'd said one night while pulling off her heels and flopping onto the couch. "He's got this cool older brother vibe, but he's totally professional. You'd actually get along." Maybe he would. But Andy didn't want to. Something about the way she talked about Clyde rubbed him the wrong way. He tried to ignore it, to chalk it up to stress or overthinking. He'd been working late too, trying to get his freelance gigs off the ground. Maybe they were just growing apart a little. That happened, right? Relationships had ups and downs. Still, it gnawed at him. One Thursday morning, Jessica kissed him on the forehead as she was heading out, her heels clacking against the hardwood floor. "Don't forget, tonight's the office party. Spouses are invited. Starts at 7. Andy raised an eyebrow. "So, I'm allowed to crash the hallowed halls of Ridge and North Marketing now?" She laughed. "For one night only." He smiled, but inside, something twisted. This would be his first real look into Jessica's work life. Into Clyde's world. And deep down, Andy wasn't sure he wanted to see what he might find. The Ridge and North Marketing office was a mix of modern minimalism and startup flair, open space, abstract art on the walls, and just enough exposed brick to feel trendy. The office party was in full swing when Andy and Jessica stepped off the elevator. Music played softly in the background, laughter echoed from corners, and a small crowd clustered near the catered snacks and open bar. Jessica looked stunning in a forest green dress that hugged her in all the right places. Andy felt a swell of pride walking in with her. She turned heads, no doubt. But tonight, one head in particular didn't stop turning. Clyde. He was tall, late 30s maybe, with that confident, easygoing look of a guy who knew how to charm a room. Crisp shirt, slightly undone collar, expensive-looking watch. The moment he spotted Jessica, his whole face lit up. "There she is," Clyde said with a grin, striding over. "And you must be Andy. Jess talks about you." Andy extended a hand. "All good things, I hope." Clyde shook it firmly, his smile never fading. "Only the best." There was nothing wrong with the way Clyde looked at Jessica. Nothing you could point at and say that's inappropriate. But it was consistent. Like his eyes always found her again after every joke, every story. Like she was the sun and the rest of them were just orbiting around her. As the night wore on, Andy watched the dynamic unfold like a slow-motion car crash. Clyde stood a little too close when he talked to her, leaning in even though the music wasn't that loud. When she laughed, she'd touch his arm briefly, natural, sure, but it happened more than once. They shared inside jokes Andy didn't understand, and at one point, Andy noticed Jessica had retouched her lipstick after a trip to the restroom, something she usually didn't bother doing at casual events. He tried to shake it off. Maybe it was harmless. Maybe this was just how co-workers acted after spending long hours in the trenches together. But then Clyde made a toast. "Here's to Jess," he said, raising his glass and turning toward her. "For being the real brains behind the pitch I'm getting all the credit for. Couldn't have done it without her." The room clapped. Jessica smiled, blushing slightly. Andy forced a chuckle, but it sat heavy in his throat. She really is amazing, Clyde added, eyes locked on her. Andy saw it then, the flash in Clyde's gaze. That look of admiration that went a little too far. And he saw Jessica glance away, quickly, like she'd felt it too and didn't want to address it. Later that night, in the car, the silence stretched thick between them. And Andy couldn't stay quiet much longer. The ride home was quiet, but it wasn't a peaceful kind of quiet. It was the kind of silence that buzzed. Jessica sat in the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone, while Andy stared straight ahead, hands gripping the wheel a little too tightly. He didn't say anything for the first 10 minutes. Just drove. Finally, near the turn onto their street, he let it out. "So, you and Clyde seem close." Jessica looked up, surprised. "What?" "At the party," he said, eyes still fixed on the road. "You two seemed. I don't know. Extra friendly." She scoffed, lightly. "Are you serious right now?" Andy didn't answer. Jessica shook her head and set her phone in her lap. "Andy, come on. It's a party. We work together. That's how people interact." "I've seen people interact," he muttered. "That wasn't it." There was a pause. Then she laughed, but it wasn't a joyful laugh. It was the kind people use to cover discomfort. "Wow. You sound jealous." "I'm not jealous," Andy replied. "I'm observant. There's a difference." Jessica crossed her arms. "You're being paranoid. You don't work in that environment, you don't understand how close we have to be to get stuff done. He respects me. That's it. He respects you by flirting with you in front of a room full of people." Jessica turned toward him, voice sharper now. "You're reading into it because you're insecure. Clyde treats everyone like that. He's just warm." Andy let out a bitter laugh, pulling into their driveway. "Sure. Real warm. Practically on fire." "Andy," she snapped, "don't ruin the night because of your imagination, all right? Nothing's going on. I would never do that to you." He parked the car and turned to face her. His jaw clenched. "Then why does it feel like you already are?" She didn't answer right away. Just stared at him like she wasn't sure whether to be angry or hurt. "I'm going inside," she finally said, opening the door. "I'm not doing this." Andy sat in the car for a moment after she left, staring at the spot where she'd been. The porch light lit up her silhouette as she walked into the house. He wanted to believe her. God, he really did. But the pit in his stomach told him otherwise. 2 weeks passed. Jessica kept saying work was crazy. Late nights, strategy meetings, last-minute changes to the campaign. Andy stopped asking too many questions. He didn't want another argument. But the doubt didn't go away, it just got quieter, buried beneath routine. Then came Wednesday. Around 6:45 p.m., Andy got a text from Jessica. "Hey babe, running late again. Don't wait up. Probably home around 10. He stared at the message. Something about it felt rehearsed. Cold. And just like that, the doubt wasn't quiet anymore. Andy didn't respond. He grabbed his keys and drove. The Ridge and North office was still lit on the top floor when he pulled into the nearly empty parking lot. Most of the cars were gone, it was late enough that most people had clocked out. He didn't knock. He had been there before, during the party. He knew the layout. The elevator doors opened to a hushed office space. Desks sat in orderly rows, empty and quiet. But toward the back, Jessica's corner, light spilled under the frosted glass of her office door. And then he heard it. A faint clink of a glass. Soft laughter. Andy's stomach dropped. He stepped closer. The door was slightly ajar. He pushed it open without knocking. And froze. Jessica was in her office chair, tied up. Literally tied. Her wrists bound behind her back, ankles fastened to the legs of the chair. A silk blindfold covered her eyes. Her breathing quickened the second the door creaked open. Clyde stood 2 feet from her, halfway through unbuttoning his shirt, a smug grin melting from his face as he turned in shock. There were 2 wine glasses on her desk. A bottle half empty beside them. Andy didn't say a word. He walked in, fists clenched, eyes locked on Clyde. "You sick piece of..." Crack. Andy's fist connected with Clyde's jaw, sending him stumbling back against the filing cabinet. Jessica shrieked, "Andy!" She struggled against the ropes, blindfold falling to her lap. Her face went pale. "Andy, wait." "I didn't." Andy grabbed the wine glass and hurled the remaining red liquid across her lap. It splashed across her dress, staining it like blood. "That's what you call a late meeting," he said, his voice shaking, not with rage, but with disgust. Clyde groaned on the floor, clutching his face. Jessica stared at Andy, trembling. Her voice was barely a whisper. "It's not what it looks like. It looks exactly like what it is." Andy stepped back, his hands shaking. The room was too bright, too loud with the thumping of his own heart. "I'll be filing for divorce tomorrow," he said flatly. "Have fun with Clyde. He'll look great on your resume." And with that, he walked out, leaving behind a stunned silence, a shattered fantasy, and a woman who finally realized she'd crossed a line she could never uncross. The next morning was strangely quiet. The kind of quiet that sits heavy in your chest, not just in your ears. Andy didn't sleep that night. He had stayed at his brother's apartment, lying on the couch, staring at the ceiling. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, Jessica, tied up and blindfolded, Clyde standing there like it was all normal. Like they hadn't turned their backs on everything. By 9 a.m., he had already spoken to a lawyer. By 11, divorce papers were being drafted. He didn't go to work. He didn't eat. He just drove home. When he pulled into the driveway, Jessica's car was already there. She was sitting on the front steps, wearing an oversized sweater and no makeup. She looked smaller somehow. Broken. He walked past her without a word. "Andy, please," she said, standing quickly. "Can we talk?" He unlocked the front door. "There's nothing left to talk about." Jessica followed him in. "I didn't sleep with him." Andy turned, slowly. "You were about to." Tears welled up in her eyes. "It was a stupid game. A stupid, messed up idea. We were drinking. It wasn't real. You blindfolded yourself and let a man unbutton his shirt in your office," Andy said, voice flat. "That's real enough for me." Jessica stepped forward, desperate. "I made a mistake, okay? I got caught up in the attention, in feeling wanted. I don't even know why, maybe I was bored, or insecure, or trying to prove something to myself, I don't know." Andy raised a hand. "Stop." She did. "I was willing to believe in us," he said, quieter now. "Even after I saw how he looked at you. Even after you brushed me off that night. I kept telling myself I was overreacting. That maybe I was insecure." Jessica shook her head, eyes full of guilt. "You weren't. I was wrong. All of it, everything I did. But please, don't throw it all away." Andy stared at her for a long moment. There was still part of him that wanted to rewind. To fix it. To pretend it hadn't happened. But he couldn't. "I didn't throw it away," he said gently. "You did." And with that, he walked into the bedroom, grabbed the envelope with the signed documents the lawyer had sent, and placed it on the kitchen table. Jessica didn't follow him this time. She just stood there, crying softly in the hallway. By the end of the week, Andy moved into a new apartment. Smaller. Quieter. But lighter. Lighter in a way he hadn't felt in months. Sometimes heartbreak isn't loud. Sometimes it's the silence that comes after, the silence where you finally realize your worth. And Andy, for the first time in a long time, felt free.